Peter Rabbit. Once upon a time there were 4 little rabbits, and their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. They lived with their mother in a sandbank underneath the root of a very big fir tree. "Now, my dears," said Mommy Rabbit one morning, "I'm going out. Meanwhile, you can play outside, but don't get into any mischief." "You may go into the fields or down the lane, but don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden, as it makes him very cross." Then Mrs. Rabbit took a basket and her umbrella and went through the wood to the baker's. She bought a loaf of brown bread and 5 buns for dinner. Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, who were good little bunnies, went down the lane to gather blackberries from the blackberry bush. But Peter, who was very naughty, ran straight to Mr. McGregor's garden and squeezed himself under the gate and into the garden. First he ate some lettuce and some beans. Then he ate some carrots. And then he started to look for some cucumbers, but just when he came around the lawn-mower, whom should he meet but Mr. McGregor? Mr. McGregor was on his hands and knees, planting young cabbages, but as soon as he saw Peter, he jumped up and ran after him, calling out, "Stop, you naughty rabbit!" Peter got really frightened, and he rushed all over the garden as he had forgotten the way back to the gate. While running so fast, he lost one of his shoes among the cabbages, and the other shoe among the potatoes. Then he unfortunately ran into the net on which the tomato vine was growing, and got caught by the large buttons on his jacket. He was wearing a new blue jacket with large brass buttons. Peter was so scared that he started crying. Some friendly sparrows overheard his sobs and flew to him in great excitement and asked him to slowly twist his buttons away from the net. Mr. McGregor came with a sieve, which he intended to pop on Peter, but Peter wriggled out from the net just in time, leaving his jacket behind him. He rushed into the tool shed and jumped into a watering can. It would have been a beautiful place to hide, but it was full of water, and Peter got all wet and cold. Mr. McGregor was quite sure that Peter was somewhere in the tool shed, perhaps hidden underneath a flower pot. He began to turn them over carefully, looking under each one. Presently, Peter sneezed, "Ha, ha, ha-choo!" and Mr. McGregor was after him in no time. Peter jumped out of the tool shed window, upsetting 3 plants. The window was too small for Mr. McGregor, and he was tired of running after Peter, so he went back to his work. Peter sat down to rest. He was out of breath and trembling with fright, and he had not the least idea which way to go. Then he found a door in a wall, but it was locked, and there was no room to squeeze under it. An old mouse was running in through the little hole under the door, carrying peas and beans to her family in the wood. Peter asked her the way to the gate, but she had such a large pea in her mouth she could not answer. She only shook her head at him. Peter began to cry. He started walking back toward the tool shed, but suddenly, quite close to him, he heard the noise of a hoe. Peter scurried underneath the bushes. But then he came out and climbed upon a wheelbarrow and peeped over. The first thing he saw was Mr. McGregor cutting onions. His back was turned toward Peter, and beyond him was the gate. Peter got down very quietly off the wheelbarrow and started running as fast as he could towards the gate. Mr. McGregor caught sight of him at the corner, but Peter did not care. He slipped underneath the gate and was safe at last in the wood outside the garden. Mr. McGregor made a scarecrow and hung up Peter's little jacket and shoes on it to frighten the birds. Peter never stopped running or looked behind him till he got home to the big fir tree. He was so tired that he flopped down upon the nice soft sand on the floor of the rabbit hole and shut his eyes. His mother was busy cooking, but she wondered what he had done with his jacket and shoes. Peter was not feeling very well that evening, and his mother put him to bed and made him some nice warm soup. But Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail had bread and milk and blackberries for dinner. The end.